Good morning to everyone here in Achieving Outcomes. I'm Tom Malash.
And I'm Helene Gidley from A2 Agile. We're glad to have you here this morning.
We're your hosts for today, and we want to talk a little bit about some of the fun we've been having with the value cycle and ways you can use it on all sorts of projects, way beyond just traditional Agile software development projects.
Right, and we get asked a lot how Agile can be used outside of software development, and it's really been exciting to find our value cycle process really fits for software development and just as well for non-software development projects.
And want to hit just for a few moments like where this came from. All the way back when I was one of the founders of Menlo, we created a practice called high-tech anthropology. It was like 20 years ago. You were an early student of Menlo back before we were partners.
And I'm an employee at Menlo.
And an employee at Menlo.
Use those practices.
And at Menlo, and I've itemized them, we have a chart that shows like 20 various practices. In fact, you have a deck of cards from IDEO. It's like 50 ideas of things that you could do to elicit requirements and to foster innovation. And they're all great things to do, right? The question is, or the issue is, you don't do them all of the time.
You don't do all of them all of the time. That's correct.
Now, you were also a vendor, not a vendor. You were a customer of Menlo, and you were a project manager. And I remember you saying once, one of the challenges with the high-tech anthropologists was that they want to do high-tech anthropology forever.
Yep.
And often we want to move faster. We have a need that's much more immediate. And as Helene and I were getting called in to various projects, we kept going, well, what's the absolute minimum we can do to make this really work for people?
Right, that would still provide real value.
That provides massive value, but really focused, so that we don't want to do analysis forever. Yep,
and so we distilled it down to what do we see as some of the biggest challenges with Agile teams? And the one thing that we see that comes out over and over again is creating that backlog, creating and maintaining your backlog of work. And every Agile video that we look at, or at least I'll say every Scrum video that we tend to look at, or a Scrum book we read.
Oh, I'm reading one right now by the famous Scrum author, and he just dismisses
the
how hard it is
backlog. It's
to get a good backlog.
The Scrum starts with a team of developers that work on this backlog that a product owner created. And then they jump into all the practices that the Scrum team follows. This backlog, creating the backlog, is like this magic happens, and this product owner is all-knowing and all-powerful, and comes up and creates this beautifully structured and prioritized backlog of work. And we know from our work that is the furthest from the truth.
Or
it is the hardest thing to do, is create that backlog.
Or it somehow emerges by just working with the Scrum team, because that's sort of the other mythology around Agile and Scrum.
And so that's where we hear all these stories that I have a backlog of work, but I don't know where to start. I have 1,500 stories in Jira, but I'm a bit lost of how to get going with that. And that's why we've distilled it down to what we felt would approach and address the issues that were at the heart of most of the Agile teams we've worked with, and that is creating that backlog.
And when I went to big companies, I ran into this new concept. Not new, it's probably a bad concept that's been around for 20 years, called iteration zero.
Oh gosh, yes, right. Sprint zero, iteration zero, yes.
Which was often to try to, if it's working for you, keep doing it. But in general, the way I've run into it, it's been a bad concept. But it's often trying to deal with this fact. The problem is some of them had 2 weeks to 4 week long iterations. Spending 2 weeks to 4 weeks, however much time you give for analysis, it'll tend to fill up. So our focus is, can we get the group together, and can we get through these 4 things in the value cycle in 3 days to get a backlog up and running that's in dramatically better shape? And I would like to say we sat around and designed this, but first of all, I question and I don't believe in that. This answer was emergent for you and I.
It arose from the work we were doing.
We were doing consulting, and we were doing a lot of consulting with one client that had multiple teams that had been working for years on projects and hadn't made much progress.
Right. Right.
And when we got back and we started realizing what we were doing to help them, this really emerged out of that and that discussion. That and several projects we did over several years. So this is our minimal set. Do these 4 things to launch initiatives. Now, here's the fun part. What sort of initiatives?
Right. It started with software projects.
We started just with software.
Right. But we quickly realized that this would work for, well, any initiative that we're starting. So we were working with a company in Southwest United States, and it was for a portfolio management process.
Right.
We're coming up with a whole, just a business process for managing a portfolio of work. And we ran these same 4 ceremonies with that team to define that process.
So process.
Oh, we just had a power outage. So, okay, mind the screen behind us. It'll come back. There we go.
There we go. How exciting.
That's live.
It's Michigan and it's snowy and wintry, but I don't know what that was about. So in that case, it's been on their list of things they want to address for years. And we're like, look, as opposed to working on it for an hour a week for the next 3 years, let's come together, get the crew together for 3 days. We'll work through these 4 ceremonies, and we'll build a backlog of how we want to approach portfolio management.
That's right.
And this is a cycle, so probably the hardest thing for them to realize. It's taken them a while, but they're in the groove and they're continuing to work it. Is after you get all the way through that once and you start implementing the stories, you go back and revisit your vision. Is our vision still accurate? Right? Is our value stream better? The one on the bottom, persona maps, is the one that I was having the most fun with. I think you were vacationing in Florida. Yeah, maybe. But I was tweaking the personas. Because as I'd interview people, and there was a real fun one, I just want to mention. I was interviewing people, and they're like, we can't say no in this company. It's a nice company, wonderful people, really nice people. To them, saying no was just anathema. It's like to say that the point of portfolio management was to learn to what to say no to, rhetorically just didn't work. Yeah. And it was bothering me because there was a conversation around the goal is to teach people to say no. And I was reflecting back on Menlo. Yeah. When we were there working, and it's like our goal was never to say no to a user story. We were a custom software development house. If you wanted to list 1,000 user stories, we would write them all down. Yeah, we'd put them in a big backlog, though.
Your reaction to saying no was to do this, to take a story card out and to take the data from the person and say, great idea. Let's write it down. Let me write down what you're asking for. Let's make sure I understand it. And then you had a process, right? The ceremony. Like we will then estimate these stories at Monday morning at 9 a.m. And we will then do our planning session following that. And you're welcome to join.
And you can schedule them anywhere you want. But if you want to move them up front, you have to move away something that's otherwise more important to you.
That's right. So
I like to say we weren't teaching them how to say no, we were teaching them how to say yes better.
Yeah.
We put that into the persona. So that when we're looking at it, we're like, in this portfolio management process, we shouldn't message, we shouldn't say, because it's against their culture and their values. Say, I'm going to teach you how to say no. Right. It's like, we're going to teach you how to say yes better.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's the way that we can continue. And then from that, we might update the stories. We might update some aspect of our map, but this is meant to be living. So portfolio management, how you literally do change management, is one of the things that we have used the cycle for just in the past 2 months.
Couple months.
And then in the past 2 weeks.
Right. We had another one where we were called in to help a team of people who were working on responding to a grant request. And they had just a few days, 10 days to respond. And the one thing that they realized that they needed to do in that response was define out the features for 10 bits of software that they were including in this multi-year grant process.
Yes.
And they had not laid out in detail the features for those products, even at a high level.
Yeah.
They had
knew
the
them
general idea of what.
profoundly in their heads.
Right, but
They
they had.
really thought about it a lot, and they knew this domain incredibly well.
Yeah.
And they were really, really smart people. So how quickly? 3 days.
Right, 4 ceremonies. We walked them through the vision, the value stream, creating personas, which they really enjoyed. That was something that they hadn't thought of. And we had to map the core personas and build the story map. And from that, they were able to build, in the course of those few days, all of the high-level core features that they needed for the 10 products that were including in that grant.
Enough. It was like something like 350 high-level stories, enough to demonstrate that they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And it was not only clear to others, it was clear to them what they were talking about. And again, 3 days. Now, legitimately, because they were working on a proposal, they were working nights and weekends to get everything documented and written.
Yeah, they were doing a lot more than just
But we were literally constrained to 7 days because there was a deadline.
Yeah.
So we came in for 3 of the 4 or so before the deadline, walked through, and we really relied they had a lot of the vision in their stuff. We did a ton of story mapping and very light walking through everything else just to make sure we had enough, because we were under such time constraint. So you can leverage this process. This is the minimal you need to understand what you're doing.
Yep, and to get a great backlog of work where whatever it is that you're building, be it a portfolio management process, software for your organization, using this whole value stream map can be for any effort that you're looking to undertake.
And there's one more that came up in just this time frame. We didn't do it yet. We just talked with the customer about it. But the customer has a lot of developers, product developers, not just software developers. So they're like, it's not really necessarily about software, who are becoming more agile.
Yes, that's right.
The problem is, how do you do that?
Right.
What does that even mean to them?
Right.
And so for any agile transformation, for any coaching transformation, for any time you're trying to change the organization, don't just hire a Scrum and Agile coach to come in and start coaching Scrum and Agile. Do a change initiative.
Right.
Do the value cycle to launch your agile transformation, to launch your change initiative.
Right. What does your success look and feel like? That's your vision. What are you trying to accomplish?
Right.
What's your value stream map with that agile transformation?
How do you create value in the organization? The people you're transforming. What's their value stream map?
Who are you building it for? Who are you building that transformation for?
And who are those personas?
Who are those personas that you're going to have to
need to consider?
That's right. That you may have to sell it to or work through.
Is it executive managers? Is it managers? Is it your actual customers? Is it your developers? By the way, you probably want personas for all of these people.
That's right.
Because you're going to end up writing aspects of stories for all of them. But who are you putting in the center?
Is that a crucial question. So it's a great process that you can use for multiple types of initiatives and efforts. So beyond software development, great for software development, but beyond it as well.
Yeah, it's just really a fundamental approach to any change.
Yep. We've been really excited about how well it has worked for us on multiple uses, and we wanted to share that with you as well.
Some thoughts, ways to use it.
Ways to use it, and of course, if you want help using it, that's one of the things we do. We can come on site with you and run these with you and teach you how to run them and work with you and your teams. We're clearly not the experts in your area. You are, but we facilitate the walk through that, and we can get your teams delivering on your projects.
And we cover this in all of our fundamental agile training as well. But the real way, we encourage the training, but the real way to get your hands around this is to come and do it with you once.
Yeah. And you'll have as much fun as we did working with the teams, and your teams will enjoy it as well. It's one of these more collaborative, involved activities, and people who even have never done anything like this before quickly start jumping in and participating, because you're actually involving everyone in these ceremonies, in creating the work, the stories, sticky notes up on the board, and you'll be pleasantly surprised at how well people will get engaged.
Well, and that was really fun with our local project, where they're just 5 minutes down the road. Right, we have a giant university 5 minutes down the road, so a lot of people who write grants
are there, and they were
and
so
to use
engaged.
this to understand a better way to conceive, conceptualize, and write your grant. It's like start with this process for every grant that you write.
Yeah.
To understand the work, either the work of your grant or the work of how you're going to prepare your grant. You can use it literally for both.
Yeah. So
3 ceremonies, usually just 4 ceremonies, usually just 3 days, sometimes 2 if you're really fast. And when we ran it with them, after about, you facilitated maybe the first session, but it was really cool. They took over, they were up at the wall, they were building the story map, they were building the personas.
That's how you know it's working.
And we were truly facilitating and coaching, not doing the work for them. They owned it, and it was delightful to watch.
Yeah, so we wanted to share that with you and hope that you'll reach out to us as your need arrives, and we will help walk you through this as well.
Yeah, and we'll be back with more examples in the future on how to use the value stream for your projects.
Right. All right. Have a great morning, everyone.
Bye.